Hello and welcome to episode 85 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is March 24th, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So the SAP on Azure community within Microsoft is actually pretty big. There's a huge team of developers, engineers, and product managers working constantly on making SAP runs best on Azure. We have field colleagues and consultants that help our customers getting started with their SAP on Azure projects. But we also have colleagues from engineering that are working very closely with customers and help them with the latest and greatest technologies. So for this, we have actually today Shibli and Vinita joining us, and they can talk a little about what they're doing, what their teams are doing at Microsoft, and how they're working with customers. But as always, before we hand over to them for their introduction and their topic, let me actually quickly share my screen and let's take a look at some of the news from this week. And literally a few hours ago, we had a really big announcements on the SAP side. So there's this news alert on the SAP side that Microsoft has selected to use RISE with SAP for our SAP system or our SAP environments. This post outlines obviously our long relationship, what we have done in the past. I mean, you know, SAP has been or Microsoft has been running SAP for a very, very long time. We had colleagues from Microsoft Digital on the show as well, talking about their experience. And now this blog post now talks about how Microsoft will adopt S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition as part of the RISE with SAP solution. For me, that's actually another beautiful story, how we eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, where we really do the same things that we also ask our customers, or that we try to help our customers with. That we use RISE with SAP. Obviously, we will learn a lot. We will also influence a lot the way that other customers can also benefit from the experience of running RISE with SAP on Azure. So I'm really excited about this announcement, and I'm sure there will be some really cool additional steps that we improve the whole RISE with SAP on Azure scenario so that other customers can also benefit from this. Maybe along these lines, there's also a nice blog post from Joao Couto on our journey so far with RISE and SAP. So remember, over a year ago, Satya Nadella and Christian Klein were both on stage for the SAP RISE event, where Satya and Christian talked about the expanded partnership, where we talked about really working closely together, both on the infrastructure, on the development side, on the business side or the end user side. And now in this blog post, Joao talks about some of the joint customers that we really see. I think a lot of folks have seen the NBA announcement that they are using RISE with SAP on Azure. But then he also talks about the engineering things that we have done. So the Teams integration obviously is something that is top of mind for a lot of customers, and we have some really great early adopters there. Doosan is one of the customers using SuccessFactors and the Teams integration, and there are quite a few other scenarios that we have in the meantime really released jointly, where we talk about the development area, our investments in the business technology platform, the integration, the event-based integration between SAP Event Mesh and Azure Event Grid, and also the other joint reference architectures that we have. So, and then finally, the things that we also talked about, really having tools to deploy productive systems, basically with one click on Azure. So similar, leveraging the concept of the SAP Cloud Appliance Library and really bringing these productive systems on Azure. So there's a lot of things that have happened between SAP and Microsoft, and it's just great to see now some of the results that we can also really talk in public about these topics. Moving on, there's a lot of customers that move their SAP estate to the cloud, be it with Rise with SAP or migrating their SAP systems to Azure. In a lot of cases, they really want to get rid of most of their on-premises scenarios. And a lot of customers, when everything was on-premise, were still using an Exchange on-premise setup, for example. But now, obviously, they also want to leverage Office 365, want to integrate an Exchange online. And we've created or released an article that helps customers to do exactly that, to really have an integration of their SAP NetWeaver system with Exchange Online. There are multiple ways how you can do this. I mean, keep in mind your SAP system is really locked down. It's behind firewalls, so you need to make sure that you have a secure communication to Office 365. You need to have the authentication in place. And this article talks about the relevant settings and different options that you can do to actually connect your NetWeaver system to Exchange Online. Moving on, we had Ralf last week on the call, and we had in several discussions also already talked about the AzAcSnap tool. And Geert van Telling is in this article talking about how to use it for SAP HANA and actually also for Oracle instances. So how you can really use this tool to create snapshots, to do backups, do restores, and as with most of the tech community blog posts, there's a lot of content, a lot of details in these blogs that outlined how to set up and configure these scenarios.
The interesting part, Geert is from the NetApp or Azure NetApp team. So he's on the Oracle part. He's talking about the Azure NetApp snapshot features and integration with Oracle. So AzAcSnap Azure application consistent snapshot, meaning you need to put the database in a consistent mode to do the snapshot, and ANF is doing using those on-premise technology to quickly do a snapshot without taking much space, and also quickly to do the restore. And in that way, it's when compared with the kind of maybe classical backup where they would do a copy. I mean, you don't do a pressure on the system, and you are able to snapshot it any time and also restore it very quickly, which reflects on overall availability, right? And on RTO and RPO. So nice blog. I mean, all it's in a private preview, but people are warmly welcome to try it, meaning it will come sooner or later as a public feature.
I think when Geert joined us, he already hinted at some of these scenarios, but now it's really great to see the related documentations here. Good, we have one last topic, and Robert, I think you also brought this up some time back about a partner in Germany.
Yeah, exactly. This is All for One Group partner in Germany, and they bring actually very interesting, let's call it concept. We have, talk here many times about integration and share our best practices from single sign-on till integration with teams. But what they bring is an additional level. They actually implement the building blocks of integrations like synchronization with Azure Active Directory, many other building blocks which you anyhow need for any kind of integrations. So they now switch to focus when they are discussing with customer. They are discussing about business challenges, business processes, how to modernize these challenges. Of course, there are some technology challenges still there, but they are somehow masking that because this is already given in building blocks. So they are able to say today, customer, when you're going with us, with All for One Group with SAP on Azure, we will bring all those integrations, building blocks by default. Yeah, so you'll get that from us. So the next step is discuss with you how to really bring those business benefits with integration with teams, with integration with forms, which also, if you're on business technology platform, how to extend business technology platform with Microsoft services. And they really build it like a packages, like building blocks. I will say unique today on market. Yeah, there is really good idea behind that. Yeah.
I agree, and I think I was super excited to see this, because obviously we have talked about this many times. We have individual customers where we are doing this. Maybe we look at the Teams integration, or we look at the Office integration, or we look at the Power Platform integration. But what All for One has done here is I think really, as you said, maybe this is the first time that I see this holistic package, and it's not only bringing the data in Teams, but it's also, for example, that they have Fiori, SAP Fiori user interfaces from there they have integrated into the Microsoft Graph. There's actually also a short video here, a demo teaser. It's like 5 minutes or so. So I think this is really fantastic, and let's see. Maybe we'll see additional partners also going this route.
I mean, nothing against having nice slides about integration, but the integration topic is very complex, can be very complex. Yeah, and of course you cannot solve all solution problems on this planet. But I think this is one first step in really understanding how to create small packages and live the cloud mentality. Be scalable, vertical, horizontal, and help a customer to integrate much faster than you should do it in an old way. I mean, this is probably something which they start, probably other will follow. Yeah, and really, I am very excited to see what they will introduce next.
Great to see that partners are so active, basically, in the area. So with SAP on Azure, right? Now, for me, it's always interesting. Typically, Holger and Robert, we always have a lot of those technical, topics, and from time to time, what we try to do more also the strategy and technology both, just to make a pause and think where we are going, what are we doing, and why we are doing what we are doing, right? So just to know, okay, we are in good direction. So really happy to have Vinita and Shibli from the SAP and Azure Customer Advisory team. It's an Azure Core engineering team to tell us more about what's happening in there, meaning also my part of the organization. So just let's, guys, warmly welcome. Maybe let's start first, ladies first. I would say let's start with Vinita. Maybe Vinita, tell us a bit more about yourself, your role at Microsoft, how long you've been Microsoft, and how are you related to SAP on Microsoft, meaning Azure area, because this is our daily bread on SAP on Azure YouTube channel.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be on this podcast, and I've been following you all. So just want to say tremendous work here. Very excited to follow and listen to your podcast every week and understand what's the latest and greatest in the cloud and SAP world. Just a bit about myself. My name is Vinita Ananth, as you mentioned. I work in Microsoft Azure engineering, leading a team called Azure Specialized, and we're sort of going through a little bit of a rebranding. Yes, it's essentially a custom engineering team, but I think we're leaning towards a customer solutions incubations. And I have, overall responsibility for supercomputing as well as mission critical workloads like SAP. Just a bit about myself, background wise, I've been in Azure for 5 years. I started my career actually in the petri dish of innovation, which is in the Silicon Valley in the 2000s. I'm dating myself now, and helped build Mercury Interactive, which at that time, built the world's best software testing and monitoring solutions. So I helped build their software as a service business from ground up, and until it became the second largest SaaS company in the world after Salesforce.com. And during that stint, of course, I had overall responsibility for product management, product marketing, and customer success. That company got acquired by HP in 2006. I moved regions at that time and then held P&L responsibility for HP software as a service business for APJ for a few years, and then went off and did a little bit just enriching myself in some entrepreneurial stints. I also helped to establish a VC firm in India, Hive India, which is a big data and investment arm, and then moved back to the US and was part of a few startups. You're probably already catching the theme here. I've worked in a few different startups, so I was attracted towards a couple of unicorn companies in the region, Aptio and Chef Software. Chef is one of the leading deployment automation solutions that we've used extensively. And what I loved about that stint was that I learned the power of open source communities. And you'll see some of the themes in what my team does is from the learnings that I had in working with a community of over 60,000 developers, but about 1,200, 1,300 of them contributing members with a very with the goal of basically providing a world-class software without actually a monetary gain from it. And I think that is just incredible to see that sort of passion around creating software. And so when I joined Azure and Microsoft in 2017, I've been sort of responsible for, you categorize it as solution engineering and incubation for mission critical workloads. And SAP is really one of the most important and marquee workloads for Microsoft and in my responsibility set as well.
So
it's not in startup mode anymore. SAP on Azure is very established in the meantime.
That's right. Yeah, I can put scaling on my resume now.
Yes.
Yeah. So Shibli, how about you?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Shibli Subhani. Very happy to be here. Just very excited. And again, just wanted to echo what Vinita said about the fantastic job that you guys are doing on the podcast. It is one of the bulletins that a lot of us in the tech community inside of Microsoft, and certainly with partners and some of the customers that I've been talking to, they mentioned. So, kudos, Holger, Goran, and Robert for starting this, and thank you for inviting us today to come speak to you. So a little bit about myself. I have been at Microsoft for a little over 3 years. I have been in the IT industry, software services, cloud management, cloud managed services, hosting infrastructure business for about 17 years. I started my career back in late 2002, 2003 on a very interesting project related to compliance and Sarbanes-Oxley, because at the time there was a lot of things going on around Enron and other things. And, the market had, after I graduated from school, the market had sort of crashed for telecom and wireless engineers. There weren't many jobs, and luckily I was able to parlay some of my experiences with systems and security and other things into a role that sort of landed me into sort of an audit firm. And from there, I actually learned about SAP security, and from SAP security, I graduated into infrastructure NetWeaver basis. So I'm I consider myself a very hardcore SAP NetWeaver basis infrastructure security architect. I mean, I kind of did that for 10 years. A lot of that was traveling, road warrior work, consulting with large, Big Four type vendors and audit firms, and then started to work with SAP, the consulting company, the SAP Americas, as a partner. And when I started doing that, I ended up in very many of these large implementations, deployments, and migrations for a period of time. After that, I sort of moved careers into not traveling so much as, my family started growing. The demands of being a road warrior were very taxing. So I started, getting into management work and with hosting and private managed cloud with very large players like IBM and Supernova and others. And prior to Microsoft, I did a stint at CenturyLink, where I was responsible for their, I had a P&L responsibility running their private managed SAP business, as well as sort of a technology consulting business. I ran into Vinita. I have a very interesting story about how I came over to Microsoft, but I ran into Vinita at one of the tech eds, and Holger, I believe you were there. You were sort of running the garage works over there. I think this was in October of 2018. And I wasn't very clear about what, I was going to be doing over the next 10 years. I knew that, I was trying very hard to win a lot of deals in the SAP and Azure business, especially if where we were in the hosting and other areas. And we sort of kept getting edged out by Azure. And at the time, Vinita, totally impressed me with, the resume that she just talked about, and what she was trying to do was incubating this team of experts who were going to come over and sort of build this practice where we were going to be helping some of the largest vanguards, some of these largest customers move their workloads to the public cloud. And, like you said, it was still a startup business at the time. It was kind of like there were big plans, and of course 3 years down the road, it's obviously a huge business, the SAP and Azure business. So that's how I started here. And then, yeah, it's been quite the ride, I would say. Last 3 years, have had the great opportunity, the honor and privilege of leading a worldwide team of experts. Goran is one of them who is on my team, and very happy to have him. Folks like Goran who do tremendous work with a lot of deep work, having the depth and breadth of not just having SAP experience, but also a lot of cloud experience. And so what we try to do is we try to differentiate ourselves from other players by providing our customers a lot of the depth and breadth that they need to move complex workloads. And I think some of the successes that we've had is a testament to, the efforts that have been put in the space. So, yeah, I'm very happy to talk about some of that later on today with you guys.
Yeah, maybe we can go more deep dive. Basically, that you guys tell us what exactly you're focusing on, or the whole team. Maybe start with Vinita. What exactly we are doing, how we are helping the customer, how we share that basically knowledge with the others, and how we translate into solution, as you mentioned, right? Vinita, maybe.
Happy to. We have a couple of slides that we can share, sort of, so we can sort of visualize the approach that we're taking. Just give me a moment.
If you want, I can share, Vinita.
Yeah, that sounds good. The next slide, please.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll just start with more of an approach, just to give you a sense of where we're coming from. So I've tried to champion a dual innovation approach, and most of you are familiar with product groups unilaterally building inside out, right? Releasing, of course, great game-changing solutions, and we've done that exceedingly well in Azure over the last few years. But as we've done that, we've also, I'm a great believer in a bi-directional innovation approach where, yes, product teams go inside out, but we also, alongside with that, do an outside in. And in this approach, we deeply engage with customers in their transformational journeys, uncover, the shifting customer demands, rapidly innovate to reduce time to market, and then create software solutions that really aligns with the customer's journey. And this is the philosophy that we've used for creating the customer engineering or customer solutions and incubations team. Moving to the next slide, I'd say the key 3 areas where we have influencing and impacting and maybe interconnected patterns is the programs around first top customer engagement, top engineering customer engagement, and these are generally nominations from the field, our partner ecosystem, where my team, like experts like Goran and the folks on Shibli's team, they give advice and guide customers on their most complex and largest implementations of SAP in the globe, right? These are, usually the tippy top. And so with the complexity and the size of these deployments, generally these engagements are in the range of 18 months to maybe even a little longer. The second is market expansion initiatives, and it's along the lines of we've worked with customers, and usually hundreds of customers. We understand where the patterns are, how customers are asking for our solutions, and usually in emerging markets or maybe even in expanding existing markets, there needs some additional. There's usually a need for empowering a partner ecosystem, either through strategic partnerships or enablement, as well as in delivering success in lighthouse deals. And that's another key program that we deeply engage in. And the third, but certainly not least, is taking the patterns and practices from these hundreds of customer engagements into either product incubation or direct feedback to the platform teams that either extends the platform or even strengthens it, as well as fosters innovation. And some of the most impacting work my team has done, I'd say, in each of these pillars, from the first one, customer engagements, you'll hear more about customer stories, but one that I can sort of share is a public story, is the Walgreens deployment of their S4 system. This was deployed in our HANA large instances with more than 500, 600 VMs, and a lot of deep technology used here. And the main impacting and most important deliverable for the customers was that more than 9,000 of their stores are now running on Azure. So this sort of 50-person-ish team, has delivered to, in this last year, we did about 120 customers and contributing over $1 billion to Azure, shaping the product through our customer feedback, and then also incubating solutions. And then finally, I think one thing that will come up, Goran has talked about his blog posts and enablement sessions, and we don't give enough credit to our experts like Goran who do a lot of this. And I also want to say that we've done, we've done again close to 100 posts as well as enablement sessions, both internally and externally.
Actually, recently we had a Momin and Ambus session on 100 terabyte migration from our team.
Yes.
Huge system, monster databases, really monster databases from size, complexity, performance, downtime. So that's also driven by this team, and really proud to say.
For me,
session.
For me, this incubation and innovation, that's also one of the most exciting things. For me, it's really like, again, since we had Microsoft Digital on the show a few times, and we know that Microsoft Digital is very much influencing the way of the product, because we eat our own dog food or we drink our own champagne. And right. I think what you are just doing is the same thing, but just on a much bigger scale. You really work with a lot of key customers, and obviously you learn with these customers. But instead of just taking these learnings only to the next customer, you're actually taking the spec to the product, to the engineering sides, and influencing the way how we evolve and enhance the product, so that really every customer can benefit from this. So that's what I really like. It's not only, it is fantastic that the team is working on Walgreens and all these customers, but I think it's even more important that you take this feedback back to improve the platform itself.
Yeah, and that is actually one of the key exciting part for me. And my background, I've always worked for product companies, right? So I understand that yes, we want to deliver success to customers, and we certainly want to delight them. But in that process, we're learning, and we want to be able to share and delight hundreds of customers or even thousands of customers. So moving to the next slide, it sort of cements that philosophy as well, right? It is it is that approach of market sensing. And I often have to remind, myself also that customers want end-to-end solutions, but we may not understand it as product people or product managers because we don't do their jobs every day, right? We're not basis consultants, we're not basis administrators, we're not the CIO of the company. So, so we need to be, we need to be projecting, and we need to have a very disciplined approach to understanding what the customer's viewpoints are. And what we've tried to do is also bring that discipline to my team. We start by looking at the customer journey maps. We start by understanding the customer needs. We fine-tune the problem, because problem isolation is one of the biggest challenges. If you don't understand the problem well, you can't develop a good solution. So we fine-tune the problem, and then we sort of further it by researching, right? We're getting this, we're getting some ideas. Let's do some more research to find out how many more customers want this. And that helps with the prioritization of the project. Once we've done that, we sort of go into that feasibility assessment, take the project through various stages, from inception to private preview to public preview. And in all of these stages, there's clear deliverables and reviews. I mean, there's stage gate transitions, right? And ultimately has to be approved by a CVP. So there's a lot of rigor that goes into this process. And we find that if you do this outside in, it brings 30% improvement in achieving both customer value and commercial success of the programs. So with that, let me just give you, I don't know, Shibli's got some content. I can come back to talking more about some of the incubation work we've done, but we can touch upon that later in this conversation.
Yeah, basically, I mean, the point is, why would customer partner go to Azure, for example? That's always a good question, what is there for them, and or how has CSI helped SAP customer and partners on their journey to cloud? So basically, I mean, Shibli, you are also, even before you are fully engaged into those projects, even now as a manager, but even before you were before you become manager, you are fully engaged. So you have, I mean, definitely a lot of insights there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key to understanding the sort of the customer journeys that we have, and I'm gonna in a minute snap to some content, and I have a view about a customer focus story that I'd like to touch upon, and then a journey map, an example of what a journey map looks like, something that Vinita talked about earlier as far as how the evolution of a customer's journey from, let's say, on-prem to cloud, and not just a migration, but modernization and those kind of things look like, as well as, some of the initiatives that we are doing. I'd like to touch upon that. But Goran, back to your question. Yeah, one of the first realizations that I had when I first came to Microsoft Azure was there was a lot of SAP practitioner experience that was available, or that was sort of there, because SAP has been around for a long time, and practitioners like myself had been doing a lot of lift and shifts, a lot of migrations, a lot of installs, and a lot of this was on specialized hardware on-prem. But when the cloud economics took over, when the sort of the macro took over and the journey to the public cloud started, there was a lot of concern around what that would look like, whether Azure is the right platform and the right public cloud for those customers. And essentially what we started to do in those early days was we started to focus on building the building blocks, the pillars of what a great Azure architecture looks like. So the well-architected framework sort of covered that. And for a great SAP architecture, we realized that a solid foundation started with building the building blocks based on the 4 pillars, which are security, performance and scalability, availability and recoverability, efficiency, and operations. And once you build your sort of architectures around that, that kind of gives you the foundation elements and the building blocks for customers to not only be able to move their very large and complex estates to the Azure hosted solutions, but also transform, innovate, and migrate and extend themselves. Now, in my early days, some of the customers, the publicly referenceable customers like the Coca-Cola Company, Kona Services, ServiceNow. In fact, I'm actually wearing a jacket right now that just reminds me of the work that we did back at ServiceNow, moving their estates over, and they sort of give us all of these really cool wags to kind of showboat around here. But I mean, what we realized was we needed to bring some of that clarity to these customers, those reference architectures, those best practices, if you will. And customers needed to hear this from practitioners that had real-world SAP experience and how that experience applied to Azure. So, within this team, as we started, Goran, as you know, when you started on the team as well, and you came to us from services, you had a lot of SAP experience, you had a lot of Azure experience, but then taking the services experience and sort of taking those back directly to the customers, the very large vanguards, the very large customers, and presenting those solutions with the authenticity that comes from somebody who has lived in the weeds. Mm-hmm. I think that was a key differentiator, right? That sort of helped stitch together some of these journeys for us, at least in the initial days. As Azure was ramping up, as our product groups were working, bringing new services, these very large SKUs, as our compute roadmaps and our storage solutions were coming to market, it was also important to sort of tie that back to what the customer experiences were on-prem, because customers ran on very highly engineered appliances, converged architectures, and now you're running in a hyperscaler cloud, so you're now in a hyper-converged infrastructure environment, and those sort of guidances that were needed, not just to customers, but also to partners. Work that, for example, Robert, your team does, with the One Commercial Partner Experience. You've been doing those to bring partners up to speed, and the large vanguards, the large GSIs, they have very complex estates. So I'm actually going to move to a slide and talk about one such customer, a very large customer that is actually moving to Azure. They started their journey a few months ago, about a year, and they're about a third of their way through the journey. So this customer is a Fortune 500 FMCG company with operations in about 190 countries, and they have revenues over $61 billion as of 2021. And essentially, one fun fact about this customer is that 1 in 3 people across the globe use their consumer products. And they have more than 400 brands, and they're bought and sold in about 190 countries. So this customer has been a Microsoft customer for a very long time, but they were on the fence in the early days about moving their SAP estates to Azure, because SAP is sort of a very mission critical application for them, and they wanted to absolutely be sure that if they were going to move their crown jewels, that Azure was the right platform for them. So they initially started off by typically what a lot of these customers do, which is to move over their central finance application over to Azure, and they ran that for a bit, and then finally, when they committed to moving, my team got involved along with other teams, the folks in the cloud solution architects, the specialists that Microsoft has, and the customer engineering teams, along with product groups, sort of came together with the partner, the very large GSI that is leading the technical delivery of this implementation. And essentially, they have a very sort of tight timeline as well, right? So they sort of came up with an 18-month timeline to say, we're going to be moving over 4 different large ERP systems across 4 different time zones over to Azure, right? And because of regulations and country-specific laws, they could not take advantage of like a global template. So we've seen some customers actually combine a lot of their ERPs into a single S4 deployment global template, but this customer decided to sort of keep their ERP separate. So it sort of added to the complexity. There's HANA, there's DB2, there's Oracle, there's all kinds of other databases that this customer has. And so we had to come up with a plan working with the GSI to what we call now an accelerated cloud-only strategy. And we need to make sure that we brought them closer to the data centers they already had in the UK. So within the Azure regions that we were supporting, we needed to make sure that the designs and things that were being done to support that. This customer is now serving about 50,000 end users and are committed to migrating all of their assets to Azure. Some of the highlights we've had so far, you know, out of the 363 applications, SAP applications that are being migrated, there will be over 2,000 Azure virtual machines and over 50 million SAPs in terms of the computing power that's going to be running on Azure.
How many SAPs?
50 million SAPs.
Wow.
Over 50 million SAPs when they're all said and done.
When I see 150 SAP SIDs across the whole globe, I mean, that's a number and complexity actually to handle it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, now the migrations that these customers, so we need to, one of the things we need to understand is this customer is actually running everything on SAP, right? There's more than 80% of their business runs on SAP. So the migration windows that happen, they have very limited downtime, right? They're not able to like have an extended period of downtime to be able to cut over systems. So a lot of the journey has to be orchestrated and a lot of the mocks and other things have to be done. So at the moment, their migration windows are constrained to less than 32 hours per SAP SID. And in some cases, they are less than 8 hours. So there are different approaches that are available. Like, for example, the near zero NZDT near zero downtime migration approach allows for a lot of this stuff to be done in restricted windows. So for those, we are leveraging that solution. We're also using partners like Datavard that have third-party solution and services that allow for delta transfer of bulk of their production system through database triggers and whatnot. Because of the colossal scale and size of the program, you know, there is a very tight rigor that is implemented. So there is like one Microsoft approach, but also a governance approach where we have Azure engineering teams, capacity teams, field teams, as well as the partner teams sort of working together to making sure that the customer's 18-month timeline can be met. Right. We've had, because of COVID, there have been some supply chain and other challenges. So there have been some constraints in certain regions that we've run into. But every one of those blockers is proactively being monitored, met, and you know, and resolved. So by the time this is all said and done, this customer would have migrated over several waves, about in about a span of about 7 years. They're expecting you know, about 350 million ACR being introduced in Azure. So again, huge numbers. You know, Vinita talked about Walgreens, which is obviously a publicly referenceable customer. This one customer is also on track to become one. So this is one example, right, of what this customer has done, you know, or is trying to do. And as you can see from a product perspective, you know, we are leveraging as much as possible first-party services that we have. So like our deployment automation framework is being leveraged for parts of the business where, you know, the speed and agility that is needed. But in some cases where there are very other complex environments where these are brownfield and whatnot, different approaches are being taken. So like I said, there's four different ERP core systems and multiple downstream systems. So accordingly, those things need to get architected. Now, from a compute perspective, this customer is using some of our largest VHMs. There's 12 terabyte VMs that are in scope. There's plans to go to 24 terabyte VMs for scale-up architectures and things like that. So, you know, beast size, right? When you think about the scale and size of these workloads. So that's a testament to where, you know, the conversation was 3 years ago when, you know, IBM used to tell customers and HP used to tell customers that at this scale, you can't go to the cloud. You can't run this in AWS or Google or Azure. Well, happy to say that, you know, Azure, we have solved it. You know, we have solved that problem. We have publicly referenceable customers now of the size and scale of Walgreens and others like this one are coming over that are going to have even larger estates that are planning to be run in Azure. So, and again, a few other highlights, you know, Azure NetApp files and, you know, things that recently released, you know, advancements in storage have also sort of helped, you know, the customer in sort of comparing their on-prem benchmarks with the performance and IOPS and throughput and other things with being able to have performance systems running better, even better than what they run today on their on-prem environment, right? So clearly all those are paying off, and yeah, it's pretty exciting to have a journey like this. And to your point, Holger, as you were saying earlier, the quality of the feedbacks that we generate on an engagement like this, from compute to storage to the services, and being able to feed that back into the product, bring it back to the product teams. You know, the innovation that can happen around some of the integrations or the feature parity, the gaps that potentially exist out there that you know, from a Microsoft Digital perspective, yes, we are using that. We Dogfood and we use that as sort of like our anchor case study, but having customers like this sort of just gives us that 360 of what we don't get from just having a Microsoft Digital story with us. So I would say over 50 plus feature items, feedbacks that have surfaced from this customer, going back to the platform, getting, you know, improving on those. Those are all just icing on the cake. And then this sort of goes back to where the rest of our, you know, Azure, SAP and Azure customer community benefits as well.
It's actually nice if we look at the product column here. I mean, back on the show, we talked about the SAP deployment automation framework. We had Philip talk about the quality check tool. We had colleagues from Azure Monitoring for SAP Solutions there. So it's really great to see all of this coming here together with this customer. So it's really fantastic to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, as we go over the evolution of, you know, at the end of the day, we want our customers to win, right? So a lot of customers ask us, you know, things like for Commvault for backup, for example, you know, and this customer is using Commvault data protection because they started off with that. But we also have Azure Backup and with backend integration now, and maybe you've had Karthik and those guys and Taka from my team who are working on those. But essentially, we're bringing a lot of feature parity to even Azure first party and Azure native solutions that meet or exceed some of the standards of these enterprise grade solutions. At the end of the day, we want our customers to win. So customers can bring some of these solutions that they're familiar with if they feel like they are not on par with or those solutions are better, but clearly with the feature parity, with some of these other things that we are investing in, the choices customers have and the cloud economics that sort of support when you have these first party services bundled together, make almost make it, so to go on your point, why should customers move to Azure? This is one example why, because it's not just IaaS, right? It's not just products or services. It's also the whole experience. It's the practitioner experience. It's having the differentiated experience of having done these for large customers at scale around the globe, to be able to do this and in a way that meets their objectives, that meets their timelines as well. I think that's critical, and I think we've been doing that very successfully.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always, when you think such a huge customer, they are betting on Azure. They put the eggs into the Azure, they believe in it, and it has to work, because if something is wrong and is down, the business stop. I mean, that can happen, and I mean, of course, they're always challenging here and there, but I always remember there was when I was on one escalation, and when somebody said from Microsoft said, like, man, when you see that power of joint Microsoft come together to fix quickly the issues, you really have a confidence that thing will work. Yeah, and I think that's definitely always, I believe in your experience as well, customer feedback, what we get actually to run such confidently on such a huge scale, right?
Yeah. And Goran, I will say this, right? While you get to deploy your precision knowledge and experience on certain things, and I get to sort of manage some of these things. Vinita actually sits on the board of customers, and in this particular customer, Vinita is also one of the executive sponsors, right? And so she's sort of the eyes and ears for our CVPs that are also tracking the customer's journeys. And, Vinita, you get into these spherical calls and whatnot, and maybe you want to share a couple of insights of what leaders profess when because there's nervousness, right? But at the same time, they need that engineering confidence, and they look to us to provide that, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think with a lot of the EBCs, the executive briefings that we have with CIOs, quite often, when they're coming up on a big wave of migration, they're usually asking the tough questions. Have you done it? Has it been done at this scale and size? Would you be able to support me and my team when we're going through the crunch times? And how are you going to guarantee that we deliver to our business expectations? So those are the tough questions that we need to answer. We also need to make sure that they're delivering it under the cost expectations, because they have usually a large orchestration for something like this, and they have to deliver to the the cost advantage, right? And I think all of those play into more one in part is the decision making of moving to the cloud, but second, ensuring that those programs go well.
Yeah, I always think, I mean, for our team, it's really unique. It's really unique position. We are fully with the customer. We are part of the engineering. We are not typical consulting, and because we are part of the engineering, we are also doing some engineering work, to help, developing some tools, I mean, for me, it always rings the bell, for example, Azure Cloud Excellence for SAP, and maybe I'm just thinking, maybe you can tell us more about, okay, what we did and what we are doing, and what is maybe the next bigger thing for the customers and partner, what they can benefit for what we learn and what we build.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to touch upon that, Goran. Just wanted to and I'm not going to drain this particular slide, but I just wanted to touch upon what a typical journey map looks like. And again, credit to Vinita. She talked about all the different experiences over the course of her career, and customer evolution from product to product marketing to customer success. And having had that, Vinita is sort of the original architect of this customer journey map. which we have adapted to our SAP engagements or SAP deployment engagements that we do at most of our customers. So without kind of draining the slide, the themes are, the important themes are, from once a customer sort of commits to what we call a MAC or a sort of a commitment to move their estates to Azure, that there starts the process of, the discovery to prep and maybe some exploration about architectures and whatnot before you can sort of design a really good platform or architecture, then getting into the implementation all the way into cutover, and then making sure that they are running in hyperscale, right? So there's a lot of these different phases that a customer journey goes through, and some of them from the early phases where we get into architecture design sessions to understand, even educate us customers about what options are available, what are the different roadmaps, what are the different solutions and offers, and then we sort of do this jointly with partners, and the large global, the GSI partners that actually come into these, they're funded programs where the partners are funded to do the migrations, but we make sure that we provide governance and we influence the partners in doing the right thing. So having a team of practitioners that have previously had that knowledge is very helpful, because we can keep our partners honest, and we can also provide the customers the confidence that we're just not a hoster that is hosting their workloads. We actually understand what those journeys look like and what the challenges are. And I think as we go through this, what we find is that in some cases, customers have such complex and such bespoke requirements that we may actually have to we may decide that we'll probably do a pilot. I mean, case in point, the 100 terabyte migration that you guys covered with Anbu and Momin in one of the previous podcasts for a very large customer over here. They had this was a, we've had some successes with 50 and 70 and 80 terabyte workloads, Oracle workloads on-prem that have moved to Azure, but this customer had a very specific requirement in terms of meeting certain benchmarks, and they wanted to do capture replay and other things. So we started them off on a pilot program where we implemented the Oracle RAT capture replay program, and then we were able to proof point that with Azure Files for NFS on our M series, this customer can actually exceed their benchmarks, and then that sort of graduated into now this customer productively running in Azure, right? So this sort of this roadmap sort of it kind of encompasses where each of those things are. And then to Vinita's point earlier, there's executive checkpoints. Sometimes there is, as we get into implementation and kickoffs, there's EBCs that we are doing with customers to sort of bring them confidence or bring them the knowledge that, where we are with our roadmaps, where we are with our plans to support their modernization and expansion and so on and so forth. And in some cases, a checkpoint call in the middle of their journey to sort of recap where they are, understand what blockers they feel, what perception versus reality is, and sort of like a reinforcement and commitment to make sure that we stay on the migration and journey together. And then as we get into cutovers, the migrations, the dry runs, as well as the run phase, there are a lot of tools that we are building, to support customers through this. What we realized that as we white gloved a lot of these customers, what we realized that and I'm going to move to the next slide to sort of talk about it. But essentially what we realized is we want to be able to take all our learnings from the past few years and sort of come up with a set of a programmatic initiative and some set of tools that we could actually hand over to our partners. It's sort of like a personalized cloud solution architecture, if you will, that they can take and sort of run with it, right? And so because we are expecting, and again, at the top of this meeting, you made some very large announcements with SAP. You know, we've had deep partnership with SAP. SAP is committed to accelerating SAP transformation in the cloud with Azure, and so Microsoft is actually implementing a lot of those things. And I think some of the tooling that we've built around that is sort of designed to address some of the pain points customers typically face, right? So what we have is essentially what we call the Azure Cloud Excellence for SAP. It's a set of guiding tenets and capabilities that can be used to improve the quality of the migrations running the workloads in Azure. And again, like I said, the inspiration we got was, we got this inspiration from essentially the personalized work that we were doing from a lot of our customers and the white glove that we did. Now, this ACES is essentially a customer experience initiative that will enhance customer experiences with the SAP workload and Azure platform throughout the customer life. So from the previous slide, I talked about the life cycle. ACES actually touches upon each and every one of those journey maps and it's from a tool and a program perspective, right? The primary objective that we have is to empower customers and partners with programs and tools across the operational life cycle. And we want to keep customer requirements at the center. We want to connect the Azure SAP partners and customers with our best technical guidance for maintaining the quality of their SAP and Azure deployments, whilst keeping on par with product innovation and product releases. So this is a commitment from us to make sure that while we are bringing best practices and learned practices of today to our customers, we'll also keep these on par with the innovations, some of the releases and other things. So that is sort of an ongoing investment that's going to happen from our perspective to support that. Sorry.
I would say, if I may, while we've been trying to map what the customers' journeys are, of course, customers are also trying to map their own transformational journeys with the technologies that lead them there, right? So we're doing both, and clearly, you know, with SAP and Azure, we're bringing them lots of cost advantages, unprecedented scale. But in addition to that, they're also looking for, you know, technologies that bring them the unfair advantage, right? And so in this particular climate, I think there's a few things that are top of mind: safety and security, you know, business intelligence and continuous intelligent action. And these are the areas that we're starting to make investments. So what you'll hear, I think, in the upcoming year will be around secure platforms, confidential computing, Sentinel for SAP, some ransomware solutions on architecture, areas of technical ops, and this slide sort of catches all of that, right? Where, you know, how do we help our customers through our Cloud Excellence program for their, you know, management and technical operations areas, and especially when they're operating in the cloud at scale. And then last but not least, we're also, you know, investing in the ecosystem, because we know that you know, it's through our partners and through the SAP RISE program we're actually going to scale. So that's those are really top of mind for us.
So basically, the team who is working with the customer and learn from the customer and knows the pain points is transferring directly that knowledge by themselves to the tools itself, which helps, right? And this is, I mean, that's a direct knowledge which is being basically fed into the tooling, right? And somehow here we see a lot of tools that helps to accelerate, you know, assessment, automation, quality check, health check, whatever you would call it. But I know there is also a part of the team which deals also with the integration topics with Teams and Power Platform and data integration. Actually, I'm sure Holger will be more than happy to mention this. So maybe you can also reflect that part as well. You know I know that there's being something cooked in the kitchen, so maybe you could tell us more what we could expect in the next year.
Yeah, happy to touch upon that as well. I think SAP data integration is is at the heart of the innovation and surround story that we're building. We know our customers. Yes, infrastructure as a service is important to them. It's the foundational piece, but more than that, really getting to the intelligence and understanding how they can take continuous action, right? Is top of mind, and therefore we're actually planning, and we don't, it's not part of our roadmap. We're still doing a lot of internal planning around this. But certainly want to be thinking through how do we develop a particular, SAP data integration with the right levels of connectors to extract the data, to transform the data, and map the data, and make it extremely simple for customers to then consume that data to drive action for themselves. And there are some other integration paths also in particular areas that are doing extremely well. I think from the customer adoption point of view, we're seeing the Power Platform being very popular, and also the industry data model. So we're going to see how we can integrate all of those to build out a full, complete solution for our customers. And that's part of the next part of the discussion, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I'd like to point out that things like Teams integration, customers' ability to do create an invoice or create a sales order or approve a PO from Teams, those are top of mind. And Holger, some of the work that you are doing in that area, the roadmaps that you've shared with some of these customers we've brought into, those are exciting. Customers get super excited about that. Yes, it is a challenge to move very large estates over, so it's a big rock. But once it's done, it's like, okay, what's next? What can Microsoft do for me? And that's where the stories start. And actually, it's a vast ocean. It's not just the stickiness of the data that actually brings in other things, but also the ability for customers to be able to innovate and have a choice, and at Azure and engineering, we are customer centric and sort of agnostic to how the customers want to do this, and we want to make sure that whatever solutions we build, whether it's through the industry data models that we are trying to map, or we sort of did that for a few use cases, and now there's some conversations that we're having around building sort of a very independent model that sort of maps SAP product with industry sort of standards, and sort of have like defined schemas for the widely popular and mostly used use cases in certain industries. So to sort of make that available to them, and things like where a year ago we did not have feature parity with some of the integrations and the connectors that our ISV partners had, but now with ADF connectors, there's a lot of those feature parities and a lot of those enhancements that are coming. So clearly, those things are something that our customers are looking for, especially the ones that have either completed most of their journeys or are looking ahead into 2025 and whatnot, that are asking us, what is Microsoft going to be doing in those areas? So there's definitely scope for building some bespoke solutions, not just through integration and modeling, but also sort of like the flywheel that'll create a set of schemas for these customers to then sort of plug into. And so that would solve a lot of the we believe that would solve a lot of the startup or the teething problems customers have with data, and then they can start taking our other APIs and solutions and plug and play into Synapse and other things to where they can innovate and transform. So we're certainly looking at those from a roadmap perspective as well.
And I think that's a real great closing. So not just infrastructure as a service, but the whole surrounding story where the customer can benefit, and have confidence, to really have the benefit of the cloud, of different cloud services, right? Yeah.
You know,
So guys,
we need always to make Holger happy and mention something about integration. Otherwise, you know.
we are always teasing him, you know, all the time. But actually, it is one part of the big picture, which is definitely a value add-on, a huge value add-on, right? And I think this is a great differentiator that Microsoft Azure is having towards other cloud vendor in the SAP space. Yeah.
Yeah, Robert, to your point, I can't get enough of that. I must say, and I said that, right? One of my obviously motivation to come was the pitch that Vinita had for what she was doing and to sort of move over to Microsoft, but also just being in that SAP garage in that Venetian hotel, which Holger was running. That was amazing, Holger. I mean, you were doing some cool stuff even back in 2018, right? So I think that stuff has always been important, and I think now with the collective sort of power of you know, the specialists or architects or engineers, I think there is certainly more intent that we have to double down on those areas and help our customers win.
Yeah. No, that's a great closing, and I'm sure, I mean, such stories will give a confidence to the customers to move it to Azure, you know, definitely that we are there to stand behind them and also to see the future there, that which is just getting better and better. Yeah. So guys, really thanks a lot for sharing with the bigger community. I hope to have you also sometimes later with the, let's say, with the newest updates, especially on those tooling. That would be really quite interesting for the bigger community to get it. Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Happy to be back.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.